Everyone knows about Woodstock's music, but what about the deaths they covered up? Or why the FBI wanted it destroyed? In 1969, what started as a simple recording studio became a $3 million disaster that nearly killed dozens. From performers demanding payment at gunpoint to secret government plots, here's the disturbing truth about America's most famous festival. Woodstock started as an idea for a recording studio, not a festival. In 1969, Michael Lang and Artie Kornfeld thought of building a quiet place where musicians could create their music. They wanted to call it Woodstock Soundouts. They imagined artists like Bob Dylan and the band coming to the studio in Woodstock, New York, to record away from the busy city. They even found land for it, a 300-acre plot, and began planning. The studio would have a cutting-edge 24-track recording system and living spaces for musicians. Everything was going well until their meeting with investors John Roberts and Joel Rosenman. During that meeting, the plan shifted. Instead of just building a studio, they decided to hold a concert to raise money for it. This one small change set everything in motion. When they started planning the concert, they didn't know how big it would get. At first, they thought it could happen in Woodstock, but the town didn't allow it. People there didn't want a flood of hippies, so the organizers had to look for another spot. Eventually, they found Max Yasgur's dairy farm, about 43 miles away in Bethel, New York. Even though it wasn't held in Woodstock, the name stayed, and that's how the Woodstock Festival began. The four men behind Woodstock were very different. Michael Lang was just 24, a relaxed guy with big ideas and a lot of music industry connections. Artie Kornfeld was 26, already a successful record executive with experience in writing and producing music. John Roberts, also 26, was from a wealthy family and provided the money to fund the festival. Joel Rosenman, 27, was a lawyer who brought business sense to the group. Together, they formed Woodstock Ventures in February 1969. They often disagreed. Lang and Kornfeld focused on the creative side, while Roberts and Rosenman worried about money and logistics. Somehow, despite their arguments, they managed to make it work. The organizers worked fast. They only had 6 months to plan everything. They booked 32 artists, sold 186,000 tickets, and found a venue after being rejected twice. They expected 50,000 people, but over 400,000 showed up. This created chaos. They couldn't finish building fences, so the event became free. They also spent a lot of money on portable toilets, but only got half of what they ordered. It was messy, but the spirit of the event kept everything going. At first, the plan was for a small, simple concert. But by late March 1969, they decided to make it a 3-day festival. They called it the Aquarian Exposition, a name inspired by the age of Aquarius, which symbolized peace and love. Creedence Clearwater Revival was the first big band to join, and that made it easier to book other acts. But things kept going wrong. The town of Wallkill, where they originally planned to hold the event, canceled their permit just weeks before the festival. This forced them to quickly find Max Yasgur's farm in July 1969, only a month before the event began. The festival was expensive. They started with a $500,000 budget, but it ended up costing $2.4 million. Woodstock Ventures almost went bankrupt. What saved them was the success of the documentary and album that came after the festival. Another last-minute change made Woodstock even more iconic. Just 2 days before it started, the organizers realized they couldn't finish building the ticket booths. Instead of canceling, they decided to let everyone in for free. This decision turned Woodstock into more than just a concert. The unexpected crowd created problems with food, water, and medical supplies. Vendors ran out of food quickly. Local residents and nearby towns stepped in to help by donating supplies. A group called the Hog Farm set up a free kitchen, serving meals like rice, vegetables, and granola to around 15,000 to 20,000 people daily. Medical teams had planned for 50,000 attendees, but with so many more people, they were overwhelmed. Around 3,000 people needed treatment over the 3 days. There weren't enough supplies, so they had to improvise. Sanitation was also a big issue. With only 600 toilets, there was roughly one for every 833 people. When it rained, the mud made everything worse. Yet, despite all this, there were no major outbreaks of illness. A peaceful and cooperative atmosphere kept things calm. The crowd, though massive, worked together. Adding to the strange but memorable scene, cows from Yazgur's farm wandered freely among the people. The farm workers tried to keep the cows fenced in, but with so many attendees camping everywhere, the fences didn't hold. The cows moved around the crowd, and festival-goers even petted them or sat nearby. Some stories claim that people milked the cows when food was scarce, though this is likely more myth than fact. Seeing cows among the hippies added to Woodstock's unique charm, showing a mix of rural simplicity and counterculture unity. The traffic leading to Woodstock became legendary. On August 14th, the New York State Thruway was jammed for 10 miles, and Route 17B, a small 2-lane road, became completely stuck. Cars didn't move for hours. Many people abandoned their vehicles and walked to the festival. Performers were also stuck in the jam, and some couldn't make it. The organizers hired helicopters to bring in artists, food, and medical supplies. Helicopters became the festival's lifeline. They flew in artists like Jimi Hendrix and The Who, and dropped sandwiches and water for the crowd. The U.S. Army even sent helicopters to help with medical emergencies, flying sick or injured people to nearby hospitals. These helicopters, often used in the Vietnam War, became symbols of peace at Woodstock. Their constant buzzing overhead became part of the festival's atmosphere. In 1969, Woodstock was getting ready for hundreds of thousands of people. The organizers had a big problem. They didn't want to use regular security because it might feel too strict or cause tension. That's when Wavy Gravy, a man from the Hog Farm commune, came to help. He and his friends were different from any security team you've seen. They arrived on August 15th, just as the festival began, ready to handle the crowd of nearly 500,000 people. Wavy Gravy and his group called themselves the Please Force. They didn't yell or use force. Instead, they politely said, "please," when asking people to cooperate. They even wore funny Smokey the Bear costumes with ranger hats and furry outfits. These costumes made them easy to spot in the crowd and gave a cheerful, peaceful vibe that matched Woodstock's spirit of love and kindness. Their soft approach worked, calming situations without making anyone feel threatened. As the crowd got bigger and harder to manage, the Please Force came up with a clever idea. They found people in the crowd who seemed responsible and asked them to help. They gave these people red armbands with a flying pig design. By the end of the festival, hundreds of people were wearing these armbands and helping out. This made the team much bigger and let them keep peace across the huge festival grounds. Wavy Gravy also had a fun way of dealing with troublemakers. When reporters asked what they would do if someone caused problems, he joked that they would use cream pies and seltzer bottles as their weapons. He said this on August 14th, just before the festival started. Everyone laughed, and it became clear that they were serious about staying peaceful, but never about being violent. The idea of being hit with a pie or sprayed with fizzy water fit perfectly with their fun, light-hearted style. Surprisingly, this silly idea worked. From August 15th to August 18th, over 400,000 people attended Woodstock. and there was almost no violence. One fight happened between two cowboys, but the crowd around them started chanting, "Peace!" The men quickly stopped fighting and shook hands. No one from the police force even had to step in. This showed how the peaceful energy of the festival kept people calm and respectful. The hog farm commune's involvement was also unexpected. They weren't trained in security. They were from New Mexico and lived together as a community. They got involved when Woodstock's original security plan fell apart. Michael Lang, one of the organizers, needed help fast. On August 7th, he called the hog farm and asked them to take over. Wavy Gravy and about 80 others flew from Albuquerque to New York on August 13th. Most of them had never traveled that far before. Even though they weren't trained, the hog farm knew how to care for people. They set up calm centers around the festival to help anyone feeling overwhelmed or struggling with a bad drug trip. These centers provided a quiet place to relax and feel safe. The hog farm also set up free kitchens to feed thousands of hungry people, which made them even more loved by the crowd. Their kindness and teamwork became a big reason why Woodstock felt so peaceful and connected. In the end, Wavy Gravy and the hog farm proved something important. You don't need strict rules or force to handle big crowds. Kindness, humor, and teamwork can work even better. Woodstock showed the world that people can take care of each other and stay peaceful, even in such a massive gathering. This idea changed how festivals were managed in the future. On August 16, 1969, John Sebastian walked onto the Woodstock stage around 3:30 p.m., wearing a colorful tie-dyed denim outfit. He wasn't supposed to perform at all. He had only come to watch the festival, but things didn't go as planned. The festival was running late because of rain, and the organizers needed someone to fill time. Lighting coordinator Chip Monk saw Sebastian backstage and sent him out to play. This led to one of Woodstock's most memorable and unexpected moments. Sebastian had taken LSD before going on stage, which made his performance unique and a bit strange. He played for about 30 minutes, starting with "How Have You Been?", a song that hadn't even been released yet. He also performed "Rainbows All Over Your Blues" and "I Had a Dream." Between songs, his talk was random and psychedelic, fitting the vibe of the festival. At one point, he said, "Far out, far around, far down, far up," before talking about living rooms and pipes in a way that made little sense. The most touching part of his set was when he sang "Younger Generation," dedicating it to someone in the crowd who had just given birth. He stumbled over some lyrics, likely because of his altered state, but his warmth and connection with the audience made it unforgettable. His performance, though unplanned, became one of the defining moments of Woodstock and perfectly captured the festival's spirit. The moment was later featured in the Woodstock documentary, making it even more iconic. Melanie Safka's Woodstock story was just as surprising. On August 15, 1969, she was a 22-year-old folk singer with little experience and no major hits. She had never performed for more than 500 people, so playing in front of hundreds of thousands at Woodstock was overwhelming. Her journey to the stage was as unusual as her performance. A year earlier, she had accidentally walked into the wrong office in New York City. Instead of auditioning for a play, she found herself in the office of famous music publishers Hugo and Luigi. After some confusion, they asked her to sing for them, which led to a record deal and eventually her booking at Woodstock. On the day of the festival, Melanie's mother drove her to the site. She might have been the only performer whose mom brought them to Woodstock. When she saw the massive crowd, Melanie felt terrified. She later described it as an out-of-body experience. She went on stage as the sun was setting and rain began to fall. She sang songs like "Beautiful People" and "Birthday of the Sun," and the crowd loved her. As she performed, people started lighting candles, creating a magical sea of flickering lights. This moment inspired her hit song, "Lay Down, Candles in the Rain." Melanie's performance turned her into a star, showing how Woodstock could take unknown artists and make them unforgettable. Iron Butterfly's Woodstock story is famous, but not for the reasons they might have hoped. The band was scheduled to perform on Sunday, August 17, 1969, riding high on the success of their song In Agata da Vida. But they never made it to the festival. The band got stuck at LaGuardia Airport in New York City, and what happened next became part of Woodstock legend. Their manager sent a bold telegram to the organizers, demanding a helicopter to take the band directly to the stage. He also insisted they be paid immediately and flown back to the airport after their performance. This didn't sit well with Woodstock's production coordinator, John Morris. He sent a sarcastic reply in a telegram that spelled out "FUCKYOU" as an acrostic. The full message sounded polite on the surface, but it was clear that the band's demands wouldn't be met. Iron Butterfly never made it to Woodstock, and their name remained on the festival posters as a reminder of what could have been. In a strange way, their absence added to their legend, turning their no-show into a cautionary tale about rock star behavior and the chaos of Woodstock. Bob Dylan's absence from Woodstock was another big topic. Dylan lived near Woodstock and was a huge influence on the counterculture movement the festival celebrated. Many expected him to perform, but he didn't. Some rumors said Dylan refused because he didn't like hippies, but the truth was more complicated. Dylan had been in a motorcycle accident in 1966, which made him withdraw from public life. By 1969, he was still avoiding large crowds and hadn't toured for years. He also reportedly didn't like how the festival brought so many people to his quiet town, disturbing the local community. On top of that, his son was sick, making it even harder for him to attend. Interestingly, just 2 weeks after Woodstock, Dylan performed at the Isle of Wight Festival in England, fueling more speculation about his reasons for skipping Woodstock. Even though Dylan wasn't there, his influence was felt throughout the event. Artists like Joan Baez and Richie Havens performed his songs, and the band, who worked closely with Dylan, played at the festival. Dylan's absence only added to his mystique, making people talk as much about why he wasn't there as they did about the artists who performed. The Woodstock Festival in 1969 is famous not only for its music, but also for the constant rain that turned the entire site into a giant mud pit. The festival took place on Max Yasgur's 600-acre dairy farm in Bethel, New York, from August 15th to 18th. More than 400,000 people came to experience this historic event, but they were met with unexpected challenges from the weather. The first heavy rainstorm started late Friday night, drenching the crowd and setting the tone for the rest of the weekend. Rain came and went throughout Saturday, but the worst storm hit on Sunday at around 5 p.m. It was a violent thunderstorm that poured about 5 inches of rain in just 3 hours. The fields were already soggy, but this storm turned them into a thick, sticky mess. The mud became so deep, it was nearly impossible to walk without losing your shoes. For many attendees, the mud wasn't just an obstacle, it became part of the fun. People slid down muddy hills, played in the muck, and even used it for body painting. One person, Nancy Eisenstein, described it as a mix of mud and cow manure, dark and sticky like chocolate syrup. The mud became a defining part of Woodstock. It brought everyone together, turning a messy situation into a shared experience. It even became so iconic that when Woodstock's 25th anniversary was held in 1994, the organizers considered bringing in mud to recreate the 1969 vibe. While the mud created challenges, it didn't stop the music. One of the most unforgettable moments of the festival happened during 10 Years After's performance on Sunday night. Their lead guitarist and singer, Alvin Lee, ignored warnings about the dangerous conditions on the waterlogged stage. With rain soaking the stage and pooling around electrical cables, festival organizers told Lee there was a real risk of electrocution. But Lee brushed it off, saying, "If I get electrocuted at Woodstock, we'll sell a lot of records." Carrying his iconic Gibson ES-335 guitar, Lee went on stage with his band and performed as if the risks didn't exist. They played extended versions of their songs, including Spoonful and Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. But the highlight of their set was I'm Going Home. This 12-minute performance showed off Lee's incredible guitar skills and earned him the nickname Captain Speed Fingers. The audience was blown away, and the performance was later featured in the Woodstock documentary, making it one of the festival's most famous moments. The Woodstock Festival in 1969 was a groundbreaking event in music history, but it was also chaotic and full of challenges. Over 3 days, more than 5,000 medical incidents were recorded, and 800 of these were drug-related. Dr. William Abruzzi, who led the medical team, faced an overwhelming situation with only 18 doctors, 36 nurses, and 27 medical assistants to handle the massive crowd. The most common injuries were foot cuts, with hundreds of people stepping on broken glass and sharp rocks while walking barefoot in muddy fields. Tetanus was a serious concern, so the medical team scrambled to find enough tetanus shots for those who needed them. Drug issues were also a major problem. Many people had bad experiences with LSD and other substances, and the medical team dealt with about 25 cases of freakouts every hour on the first night alone. To help, the festival organizers brought in the hog farm commune, who set up special trip tents to calm people down without needing medication. This approach worked well and prevented widespread panic. Alongside these incidents, there were other cases like sunburns, dehydration, heat exhaustion, and even one raccoon bite. With so many patients, the medical staff had to improvise. They turned a circus tent into a 100-bed hospital and used helicopters to fly the most serious cases to nearby facilities. The medical response at Woodstock became a model for handling emergencies at large events in the future. One of the strangest stories from Woodstock was about LSD-laced ice cubes backstage. Roger Daltrey from The Who later claimed that everything backstage, even the ice cubes, had been spiked with LSD. If true, this meant that even people trying to stay sober by drinking water could have accidentally taken the drug. This might explain some of the drug-related incidents at the festival. However, experts have pointed out that LSD breaks down quickly in heat and light, making it unlikely to stay potent in melting ice. There's no real proof that this happened, but the story became part of the Woodstock legend. This rumor fits with the festival's wild atmosphere, alongside the famous warning about bad brown acid given by announcer Chip Monk, who told the crowd to avoid a dangerous batch of LSD circulating at the event. Despite the excitement and celebration, Woodstock was not without tragedy. 2 young men died during the festival. 17-year-old Raymond Mizak was run over by a tractor while sleeping in his sleeping bag. The driver didn't see him and was trying to clear a path through the crowded and messy grounds. The other death involved 18-year-old Marine Richard Beeler, who was about to leave for Vietnam. He was found in a critical condition, either unconscious or screaming incoherently, and was rushed to the hospital by helicopter. At first, his death was thought to be from a heroin overdose, but an autopsy revealed myocarditis, a heart condition that might have been caused by drugs or a reaction to a medication like thorazine, which was used at the time to treat LSD effects. His body temperature was dangerously high, adding to the mystery. Toxicology reports were never released, leaving unanswered questions about what really happened. One of the most persistent Woodstock myths is the story of babies being born during the festival. Folk singer John Sebastian announced on stage that someone's partner had just given birth, sparking rumors that up to 3 babies were born at Woodstock. However, no one has ever come forward to confirm this, and doctors, nurses, and hospitals involved in the event reported no records of births. Despite exhaustive searches, no proof has ever been found. Some suggest that if Woodstock babies do exist, their families might have kept it private. Over the years, there's even been speculation about famous people like Tina Fey and Uma Thurman being Woodstock babies. But these ideas remain purely speculative. In 1969, during Woodstock, performers started demanding cash before going on stage, creating chaos for the festival organizers. The Who's manager, Kit Lambert, insisted on $11,200 in cash right before the band performed. The organizers, already struggling financially, had to raid cash boxes and even borrow from other performers' payments to meet the demand. Janis Joplin arrived a day later and refused to perform until she was given her $7,500 fee. When the organizers couldn't provide the money immediately, she threatened to leave, forcing John Roberts, one of the festival's organizers, to guarantee her payment with his personal trust fund. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young also demanded their $5,000 payment up front before taking the stage, and the situation became so bad that Michael Lang, another organizer, had to use his personal credit card to withdraw cash to pay them. The most dramatic demand came from Jimi Hendrix's manager, who insisted on the full $18,000 fee in cash before Hendrix would perform. With banks closed and no cash available, the organizers convinced a local bank manager to open the vault on Sunday evening. Roberts and Lang flew by helicopter to retrieve the money and returned just in time for Hendrix's iconic set. Behind the scenes, the financial chaos was overwhelming, contrasting sharply with the peaceful vibe the festival represented for the audience. The festival's financial troubles didn't end there. Woodstock ended up costing nearly $3 million, far exceeding its $500,000 budget, leaving the organizers with a debt of over $1.3 million, equivalent to about $9 million in today's money. The massive, unplanned crowd, venue changes, and lack of ticket revenue all contributed to this disaster. Roberts, the main financial backer, had to borrow from his trust fund to cover the costs. He and his partner, Joel Rosenman, spent the next decade paying off debts and dealing with over 80 lawsuits, including claims for property damage and unpaid bills. The strain was so severe that they almost went bankrupt multiple times between 1969 and 1980. The financial situation began to improve in 1970 with the release of the Woodstock documentary film. Directed by Michael Wadley, the film became a surprise hit, earning over $50 million worldwide. The soundtrack album also sold millions of copies, providing much-needed income. Even with this success, it took until 1980 for Roberts and Rosenman to finally pay off all their debts. However, by then, Artie Kornfeld and Michael Lang, two of the festival's co-creators, had already sold their shares for $31,000 each, missing out on the eventual profits. While Roberts and Rosenman recouped their losses, their business reputations were damaged for years. For Max Yasgur, the farmer who hosted Woodstock on his land, the aftermath was anything but peaceful. In early 1970, his neighbors, Roy and Dolores Gabriel, sued him for $35,000, claiming festival-goers had destroyed their property by using it as a campsite and leaving it covered in trash. Yasgur faced hostility from the local community, with people boycotting his dairy products and putting up signs saying, "Don't buy Yasgur's milk. He loves the hippies." Yasgur's own farm suffered worse damage than his neighbors, and he received $50,000 from the festival organizers to repair it. Despite this, the emotional toll was significant. After enduring years of backlash, Yasgur sold his farm in 1971 and moved to Florida, where he died in 1973 at the age of 53. Decades later, archaeologists uncovered the exact location of Woodstock's main stage. In 2018, a team from Binghamton University used metal detectors, old photos, and maps to pinpoint the stage's position. They also found remnants from the festival, like pull tabs from beer cans, which helped date the site. The team discovered 24 vendor booths in the Bindi Bazaar area, showing that the actual layout of the booths differed from the original plans. This work has been crucial for preserving the Woodstock site as a historical landmark. In 2017, the Woodstock site was added to the National Register of Historic Places, covering about 300 acres of the original festival grounds. This recognition highlighted its cultural importance as a defining event of the 1960s. The listing also protected the site and made it eligible for preservation grants. Over the years, attitudes toward the site shifted, and preservation efforts began. Today, the Woodstock grounds symbolize not only a moment in history, but also the lasting impact of the counterculture movement on American society.